Can there truly be peace between the police and the Black community? The Grio sat down with U.S. Congressman Khanna to talk about introducing the Peace Act, which stands for Police Exercising Absolute Care with Everyone. Here's what he told us.
What it does is change the standard of force for police. I mean, right now in this country, you can use force if you think it is reasonable. We're the only country in Western democracies that has that standard. In almost every other European nation, Western democracy, you're not allowed to use force unless it's a last resort, unless it's absolutely necessary. And this is a big difference. It's the difference between a police officer shooting someone unarmed and saying, well, I thought they were reaching for a gun, where it really was that they were reaching for a wallet, and that being seen as reasonable and having no consequence, versus a standard that says, no, you can't shoot unless it was a absolutely necessary act. We've made progress. We now have Senator Padilla behind it. It was part of the George Floyd Policing Act. It passed the House. We need to pass the Senate.
Yeah, this is important because we often hear police officers say, I fear for my life, and it can often seem broad to many people. But how does this bill, which covers federal law enforcement, how does it ensure that law enforcement on the state and local level adhere to this new standard?
Well, it sets the standard, obviously, at the federal level, and then the hope would be that state and local jurisdictions would follow. But we don't have the ability to dictate all of the standards, so we can at least set a federal standard that then becomes a model.
Mm-hmm. Is there any incentive for local and state law enforcement to adhere to this standard?
In the George Floyd Act, which we did, we tried to get in funding tied to the adoption of this standard, so that the revocation of funding if this standard wasn't adopted. And that was part of the negotiations. We did get the Floyd Act through the House, but as I said, that bill is stuck in the Senate. And, this is the sobering truth, Jaron. Since George Floyd, the United States Congress has not passed a single bill to deal with police violence. The House has passed it, but we have not passed anything in the Senate. So there's been a lot of talk, but we still have not taken action.
And to that point, because the Floyd bill tanked when there were bipartisan negotiations on that bill, how confident are you that the Peace Act would get the necessary 60 votes in the Senate?
I think that there is a possibility we can bring it to the floor. There are certain parts of the George Floyd Act that can have bipartisan appeal. The banning of the chokeholds, the part of the force standard being a last resort, which I said every other country has. These are common sense things we can agree on. Now, I also was for holding officers accountable and not giving them some blanket immunity, and that was part of George Floyd. Those are more, as you know, controversial provisions that are harder to get 60 votes in the Senate. This provision, I think, can get the 60 votes.
And the Peace Act is an acronym for Police Exercising Absolute Care with Everyone. Can you talk more about why care is important to be at the core of policing in America, and why it seems that Black and brown communities seem to be treated with the least care by law enforcement?
Well, this has been the history in this country, but I think that the stereotypes still prevail when police officers come and they see Black, particularly Americans and brown Americans in certain communities. Their stereotypes and biases kick in, and they think that there is a threat. And unfortunately, they often act on that fear. And they have too often in this country acted in shooting or hurting or killing people who are totally unarmed, people who are innocent. And that mindset has to change. The mindset has to change culturally, but it also has to change legally.